In 2023, an international consortium of geneticists launched the most ambitious DNA study ever attempted on a single continent. 47 nations, 40,000 individuals, every major ethnic group, every linguistic family, every corner of a landmass that holds 60% of all living humans. I remember reading the summary of their findings for the first time and having to put it down, because what they discovered was not a more detailed version of what we already knew. It was a direct contradiction of the framework we had been using to explain human history in Asia for the last 50 years. The map we thought we had was wrong. And the real map is far stranger, far older, and far more extraordinary. Asia is not a footnote in the human story, it is the story. The continent where modern humans spent most of their history after leaving Africa, where they encountered and bred with archaic species, where they developed the earliest cities, the earliest writing, the earliest agriculture. And yet the genetic history of Asia is the least understood of any major region on Earth. European DNA has been mapped in extraordinary detail. African ancestry is increasingly well documented, but Asia, with its 47 nations and its hundreds of distinct ethnic groups, remained, until very recently, a black box. What I want to do in this video is take you through what that consortium found, finding by finding, because each one builds on the last. And by the end, the picture that emerges is not just a history of Asia, it is a history of us. For most of the 20th century, the accepted story of how Asia was peopled followed a clean and satisfying logic. Modern humans left Africa approximately 60 to 70,000 years ago. They moved along the southern coastline, entering South Asia first. From there, one group pushed east and eventually reached Southeast Asia, while another moved north and became the ancestors of East Asians. Neat. Sequential, each population descending from the one before it. This model had the virtue of simplicity. It was taught in textbooks, referenced in papers, illustrated in migration maps with clean arrows sweeping across the continent. And for decades, there was not enough genetic data to seriously challenge it. Then ancient DNA technology arrived, and with it came the ability to sequence genetic material from skeletal remains tens of thousands of years old. For the first time, scientists could stop inferring migration patterns from living populations and start reading the actual genetic record of the people who had lived and died in those places. What they found in Asia required them to throw out the model almost entirely. The first thing that stopped me was the timeline. The standard model assumed East Asians and Southeast Asians were closely related because East Asians descended from Southeast Asian populations who pushed northward. The data showed the opposite. They share a common ancestor, yes, but that ancestor lived approximately 50,000 years ago. These are not populations that derived from each other. They diverged in parallel from an earlier shared source that no longer exists as a distinct population anywhere on Earth today. The arrow on the map was pointing the wrong direction, but that was just the beginning, because the same dataset that broke the directional model also revealed something that nobody had specifically been looking for. Something that the researchers described in their published findings as one of the most complex patterns of archaic admixture ever recorded in a single geographic region. Archaic admixture is a scientific term for something that, when you sit with it, is genuinely extraordinary. It means that modern humans, as they moved through Asia, encountered and interbred with other human species. Not metaphorically, not culturally, genetically. And those encounters left measurable traces in the DNA of living people today. Every person of non-African ancestry carries approximately 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA from an interbreeding event that occurred approximately 50 to 60,000 years ago. That much most people know. But what the Asian genomic study revealed was that the picture in Asia is substantially more complex. East Asian and Southeast Asian populations carry a second layer of archaic DNA from a species called the Denisovans, known almost entirely from a finger bone and a few teeth recovered from a Siberian cave in 2010. I want you to understand how strange this is. We know this species almost entirely from 3 teeth and a bone fragment. We have never found a skull, we have never reconstructed a face, and yet through ancient DNA analysis, we can tell you that the Denisovans ranged across an area spanning from Siberia to the Indonesian archipelago, and that they interbred with modern humans at least twice, in at least 2 separate geographic locations, leaving signatures still detectable in living populations today. The first Denisovan interbreeding event appears to have occurred in mainland East Asia or Central Asia, likely between 50 and 60,000 years ago. This event left a relatively small signal, around 0.2% in most East Asian genomes today. But the second event is where the picture becomes genuinely startling. Populations from the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and Aboriginal Australia carry Denisovan ancestry at approximately 5%, more than 25 times the level found in mainland East Asian populations. The Aita people of the Philippines specifically carry the highest Denisovan ancestry of any group ever measured. And the geographic distribution of this signal suggests that this second interbreeding event did not happen in Siberia or Central Asia. It happened somewhere in island Southeast Asia. The Denisovans, a species we barely know existed, were apparently widespread across the tropical archipelagos of maritime Asia tens of thousands of years ago. What I kept coming back to when I read this is the implication for what we call modern humans. We think of our species as having arrived, spread, and replaced everything in its path. The genetics are telling a different story. We arrived, we met others, we mixed. And the people alive today in Asia are not the descendants of a single ancient journey. They carry within them the biological memory of multiple encounters with species that are otherwise gone. And then the consortium found the third signal. And this one has no name. When geneticists analyzed South Asian genomes in the dataset, specifically populations from India, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, they detected a pattern of archaic DNA that did not match Neanderthals. It did not match Denisovans. It matched something else, something unsequenced, something for which we have no skeletal remains, no cave site, no archaeological record. The researchers described it as a deeply diverged ghost lineage, a population that split from the human family tree more than 1 million years ago and that interbred with the ancestors of South Asians sometime before 40,000 years before present. I want to be precise here, because this is easy to overstate, and the precision is actually more extraordinary than any overstatement. Scientists are not claiming they found a new species. They are claiming that South Asian genomes carry DNA whose origin cannot be attributed to any known archaic human group. There is something in the genetic record of hundreds of millions of living people that points toward an ancestor who has left no bones, no tools, and no name. A lineage that touched the human family tree and then disappeared into complete darkness. That is not a mystery on the margins of science. That is a mystery sitting at the center of the human story. Here's the thing I kept returning to after reading all of this, and it complicates the entire narrative I have just laid out. The archaic DNA in Asian genomes is not randomly distributed. It is functional. The EPAS 1 gene variant that allows Tibetans to live at altitude, a variant inherited from Denisovans, is present in over 80% of the Tibetan population and almost nowhere else. It is not a passive genetic relic. It is a working piece of biology that keeps people alive in an environment that would otherwise kill them. The Denisovans are extinct, but their solution to the problem of the Himalayan plateau is still running inside living human bodies today, which means the interbreeding was not accidental contamination. It was, at least in some cases, adaptive. The archaic DNA that modern humans absorbed from the populations they encountered in Asia was useful. It gave them tools, metabolic, immunological, physiological, for environments they had never lived in before. The story of human migration through Asia is not a story of one species replacing another. It is a story of one species learning from the others before those others disappeared. What does this mean for the 60% of humanity living in Asia today? It means that the genetic diversity of Asia is not a record of how one ancient population spread and branched. It is a record of meetings, of encounters between groups with entirely different evolutionary histories, happening across an enormous continent over tens of thousands of years. Some of those encounters we can trace back to named species. Some point toward lineages we will likely never fully identify. All of them left something behind. The thing that stayed with me longest after going through this research was something almost too simple to state. The people alive in Asia today, a Japanese man on a train in Tokyo, a woman in a village in Rajasthan, a fisherman in the Philippines, each carries within their genome the biological trace of encounters that happened tens of thousands of years before their civilization, their language, or their nation existed. They did not choose those encounters. Those encounters chose them. And the result is not contamination or complexity or difficulty. The result is the human being, the full, layered, irreducibly complex human being. That has been the answer all along. We just needed 40,000 DNA samples and a continent to finally see it. There is a question this research leaves open that I have not been able to stop thinking about. If there is a ghost lineage in South Asian genomes that diverged more than 1 million years ago, If there is an archaic human population that touched the human family tree and left no bones, no tools, and no other trace, what else is hiding in the DNA that we have not yet looked for carefully enough? The unnamed lineage was found because researchers were looking at a large enough dataset to detect something unexpected. 40,000 people, 47 nations. The signal was there. It had always been there. We just had not had enough data to see it. The genomic study of Asia is still in its early stages. Hundreds of ethnic groups remain unsequenced. Ancient DNA from critical sites across Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Indian subcontinent has barely been touched. The picture I described in this video is the most complete picture we have. It is also, almost certainly, incomplete. If you stayed with this one all the way through, thank you. A like costs nothing and helps more than you might expect. It puts this in front of people asking the same questions instead of accepting the first answer they find. For anyone who finds this particular rabbit hole as hard to climb out of as I do, the extinct species leaving functional biology in living populations, the lineage's geography protected when nothing else could, the history written in chromosomes instead of chronicles, subscribing is the simplest way to stay. Thanks for watching.